Democratic Chicago-based Illinois Representative Cam Buckner is doing the job Mayor Brandon Johnson has been unable to do. That is, buying the city more time to come up with a plan to keep the Bears from leaving the lakefront and heading to Arlington Heights. This weekend, a bill that would have helped the Bears save tens of millions on property taxes in that community stalled in the General Assembly. Part of the reason, Buckner's made sure it has to get through he and the 30 state House members based in Chicago. Their pitch to the Bears: if you want to leave Soldier Field, why should we vote to subsidize it?
You can't come to Springfield with hat in hand asking for what they're calling tax certainty or relief on the infrastructure part without having a conversation with the Chicago delegation. And I've told you before that those of us who represent the city want a real conversation. Sunlight and scrutiny. If it's such a good idea, you do it in public and do it on purpose.
The Arlington Heights bill is sponsored by Representative Mary Beth Canty. She says, quote, "We were super close and just ran out of time. We're going to keep working all throughout the summer." So where does that leave Bears President Kevin Warren? Going forward, he'll need a supermajority to get anything through the House and Senate. The team is struggling to gain traction during the regular session. It seems highly unlikely he'll be able to get more votes, and he might have to wait until the 2026 session next January. So if Warren and the Bears truly can't move forward without help from Springfield, Chicago still has a shot. And the city might still have a shot to save the CTA from insolvency, although that's getting demonstrably harder now that the House failed to pass a major transit overhaul. It would have rescued the CTA, Pace, and Metra from a fiscal cliff of $771 million. It would have also instituted new taxes on rideshare and delivery services to help pay for it, as well as give more authority to a new Northern Illinois Transportation Authority to make these agencies get their finances in line. Now, Representative Buckner says they might have to bring downstate lawmakers to the table to get it across the finish line.
This, to me, has to not just be about Chicago proper or even the collar counties. It has to be about the entire state of Illinois. This needs to be a bill that finds ways to create transit opportunities for the entire state, right? So that means the SMTD in Springfield. That means the Metrolink and Madison County Transit near the St. Louis border. That means finding ways to hopefully create a seamless rail route between Peoria and Chicago, which doesn't exist today. There's a lot of stuff we can do to make this palatable for the entire state.
Now, lawmakers might have been too busy passing the governor's $55 billion spending plan, literally at the 11th hour, like 11:58, that helps close a $3.5 billion budget gap by raising the vaping tax from 35% to 46%, a new 25-cent tax on sports betting that goes up to 50 cents after you bet 20,000 times, and applying the corporate income tax to out-of-state companies that do business in Illinois. There's also some amnesty to collect fines and fees from residents and some other revenue adjustment. Now, the budget passed without any Republican support. Minority House Leader Tony McComey says she knows who the real winners are. Quote, "Tax and spend Democrats are thriving in Illinois at the expense of Illinois families. Rather than pursue meaningful structural reforms to secure our state's future, Democrats chose to prioritize politician pay raises, steal from the rainy day fund, and funnel money into their own pork projects." At least for now, one of those so-called pork projects is not a new stadium for the Bears. So consider it overtime. Chicago's down by 3. They're on their own 5-yard line and need a touchdown to win. Mayor Johnson's been taken out of the game at quarterback, and State Rep Cam Buckner and other Chicago lawmakers are now leading the team down the field. Can they reach pay dirt for the city? All we know now is the clock has yet to reach double zeros.
Coming up on Paris on Politics.
The local leader of the Anti-Defamation League speaks out about a climate of hate after yet another anti-Semitic attack in Boulder, Colorado. Why the new mayor of suburban Orland Park is dealing with a Jumbotron and Lynyrd Skynyrd problem. And celebrated New York Times columnist David French on why the Democrats are having some issues with masculinity.
This is Paris on Politics from Fox 32 Chicago.
We're united in condemning acts of anti-Semitism, hate, and violence, and we're also united in a strong response to this horrific attack. I stand with this community and the people of the state of Colorado against hate and terror. And we are united in our commitment, both at the federal level and the state level, in pursuing and securing justice for the victims of this mass attack and for the communities that we serve.
Welcome to Paris on Politics, where we take you behind the headlines and beyond the spin. Federal authorities and the Boulder County District Attorney, as you saw there, say the suspect in the attack on pro-Israel demonstrators planned it for a year. Federal officials have all condemned the action, but it follows the murder of 2 Jewish Americans outside the Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. 2 weeks ago. And here at home, city council members have long been at odds about the war and whether or not the climate here is encouraging anti-Semitic acts. And joining us now is the Anti-Defamation League's Midwest Director, David Goldenberg. David, always good to see you. So put this into context. Is there a documented rise in incidents like what happened in Boulder since October 7th, 2023?
There's been a massive increase in acts of harassment, vandalism, and assault targeting members of the Jewish community and Jewish institutions. Here in the state of Illinois, over the last 5 years, we've tracked a more than 630% increase in these acts. And if you think about it, what occurred in Boulder yesterday was actually the 9th act of terrorism targeting members of the Jewish community or Jewish institutions in just the last 11 months.
And we see all manner of public officials condemning anti-Semitism, vowing to put a stop to these attacks. Here in Chicago, Mayor Johnson denounced anti-Semitism. City council members that have been sympathetic to the Palestinian cause say they don't support anti-Semitism. They don't support vigilante acts. Are leaders doing enough here locally?
No, they're not. And I'm kind of getting tired of the lip service. Frankly, what we have seen here in the city of Chicago is our elected officials and some of our civic leaders who've been fanning the flames of anti-Semitism. They're out there marching in the streets and chanting, calling to globalize the Intifada, which is literally calling for violence against Jews anywhere and everywhere. We have seen that play out in the streets. We've seen increases in vandalism targeting synagogues. We saw an Orthodox Jewish man and his daughter walking to synagogue in Rogers Park who were shot. We saw Jewish students at DePaul who were assaulted simply because they supported Israel. Come speak with me. I'm tired of the lip service that we get from elected officials, from the mayor, from aldermen, and from others. What I want to see is real, actual action. And what that means is calling it out with your political allies. It means not elevating people in City Hall with a history of being hostile toward members of the Jewish community. And it means actually saying not just enough is enough, but actually backing it up with your action.
And we know that the mayor has had an issue with folks that he's appointed that have had anti-Semitic statements in their background. Where's the line between freedom of speech and demonstration and then anti-Semitic activity that should be prohibited? Because we see a lot of protests in Chicago. Folks are exercising their First Amendment right. Do we risk violating the Constitution if we crack down on that?
Well, let me push back a little bit on the premise here that you can't have one without the other. So let's put things in perspective. First of all, there's nothing anti-Semitic or hate speech related by saying free Palestine or even wearing a keffiyeh. But where it becomes actually, where it crosses the line is where you are inciting violence. Free speech comes with a cost, right? And it also comes with immense responsibility. ADL, for example, tracked over 5,000 anti-Israel protests in the last calendar year. Less than half of them that we consider having any type of anti-Semitism occurring in there. So when you're calling for violence against Jews by calling to globalize the Intifada, this is what happens. You see violence. You see 2 Jewish individuals coming out of a Jewish museum in a Jewish Heritage History Month who are shot and murdered on the streets. Right? You see Jewish youth who are assaulted in places like London that occurred this past week. You have those types of things that are occurring. So if we find no acts of anti-Semitism in more than half of the anti-Israel protests that occurred in the United States in the last year, don't tell me you can't have a protest that is peaceful that also is not inciting violence.
And maybe it's on those leaders to make sure that the chanting and the speech sticks with their cause of a ceasefire and protecting Palestine. But let me ask you this. One of those groups, CARE, the Council for American Islamic Relations, they had a very controversial response to the killings of the embassy workers in D.C. They say, quote, "We stand squarely against vigilante violence, yes, even against those who are complicit in genocide." When you hear reactions like that, what goes through your mind?
It's offensive and it's disingenuous. At the end of the day, what you can say is we are against violence against Jews anywhere and everywhere where they are being targeted because of their religion or because of their beliefs, right? Full stop. The fact that you get into linguistic contortionism and have a but or a caveat suggests that it's a little bit disingenuous and speaking with a little code.
All right, David Goldenberg of the ADL, Scary Climate Right Now. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Paris.
And we're back after this on Orland Park's mayor and why they have a Leonard Skinner problem in that town. Don't go away.